as you've read through some cultural analysis theory and some personal essays that engage cultural analysis and are now on to the brainstorming phase for your own cultural analysis paper, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the concepts that you'll be engaging for this paper. So the paper asks you to identify a cultural event, phenomenon, or idea and offer a personal essay critique of that event, phenomenon, or idea through an engagement with the cultural lenses that you read about in the theory of Module 4. So that would be Williams, Pratt, and Benjamin. In your reading journals in week 4, you were asked to identify a work that illustrates the definitions of culture as offered by Raymond Williams. And in a follow-up reading journal entry, you identified one of the 2 theoretical readings and summarized some of the tensions that exist in cultural analysis, as described by the anthropologist Mary Louise Pratt and the mid-20th century cultural critic Walter Benjamin. So some of those tensions include the difficulty in distinguishing between what is socially constructed and therefore expressed as a social definition of culture and what is ideal. Pratt makes pretty clear that no matter the intent of the analysis and of the observer, in ethnography and by extension our own mode of cultural analysis that you'll be engaging, it is not possible to be fully objective. The belief systems and values of the observer always influence the analysis to a degree. Benjamin, questions the value of authenticity in a culture of reproduction, and in so doing looks forward to some of the questions that we're going to engage in the final weeks of the course, including the question of, what does it mean to be authentic in a digitally centered culture of production? So each of the personal essays you've read in Module 5 engages an analysis of culture that illustrates not only the lenses of culture that Williams identifies, but also the difficulties of critiquing a culture in which one participates. For reflection on the essays as you brainstorm potential topics, it may be useful to return to some of the basic rhetorical principles that we studied during the first weeks of the course. How do these authors present their critiques of culture through a positioning of their own sense of self in the personal essay? What methods do they use to center the critique and either emphasize or maybe even de-emphasize their position within the culture? To use one of the essays you've just read as an example of what's possible in cultural analysis, David Foster Wallace originally published Consider the Lobster as a review of the Maine Lobster Festival for Gourmet magazine in 2004. And its publication garnered some pretty intense criticism from readers who really hadn't anticipated contemplating through a review article of a festival what it means to, I guess, think about the ethics of killing lobsters for the pleasure of the festival goer. Not something they were anticipating in the review genre. This critique of cultural pleasure in food, however, it may have been a shock to the readers of the magazine, but it reverberated with Wallace's wider audience, who are pretty familiar with his sharp cultural eye. So while the cultural analysis paper isn't asking you to shock readers, it's the social expression of pleasure through gastronomy and the interrogation of the ideal in killing animals that's a useful exploration of the possibilities of your own critique.